So what's up, Tony? How are you?
Very good. How are you?
I'm all good. I'm all good. And getting through the boredom of isolation, and hopefully we'll be back to training soon.
Yeah. Geez, I'm looking forward to getting back to training. All right. Trying to keep myself busy in the day. That's the challenge.
Yeah, well, hopefully on the back end of it, that everything is going to start to go back to normal.
Yeah. Geez, I'd say from what I've heard, it'll be September before like classes and stuff are back on. Probably be September. I'm hoping it'll be sooner, but I've heard September.
Yeah, I
But
think
that's just
September. I think September as well will be when we actually get back, which like that. Hopefully we get back training ourselves, and then the classes will be back in September.
Yeah, I miss sparring. Like this, you can get so far on shadow boxing and bag work, but you just miss sparring.
Hitting other people.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah.
That's it.
It'll be a shock though. It'll be a shock not getting hit in 5-6 months and then going back and then getting punched in the nose. It'll be a bit of a shock. It'll be
Yeah,
like that. I'm
a
never
different
sparring
role.
again.
But how did you? So actually, at the start, I suppose, like, how did you get started in kickboxing?
I guess I got started really young. I think it was 6 years old, 6-7 years old. And I joined with my brother, my younger brother, and my older sister. And my dad pretty much took us there. He knew Ian Kingston, my kickboxing trainer, who's been my trainer now 22 years. We went down to train with him, and my dad knew him from doing security work years ago. And I had a bit of a stammer problem, so I was like, I had a bit of an issue when I was younger. I got bullied, and not by who you think. It wasn't by another student or anything. It was actually by the teacher, the headmaster. He was a pretty horrible guy. He wasn't very patient to me at all, with me at all, and I was only in his class for a year, and I developed this really bad stammer and stutter. And my dad said, okay, we're going to pull you out of that school, and I'm going to get you doing martial arts, something that's going to really pick up your confidence. And so within a year of doing kickboxing, my stammer left me, and I became a whole lot more confident. And then I wasn't any good at all. My sister was probably the best when we started. My brother was the most eager for sparring, and I was somewhere not talented, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the challenge, like. And then it was about 4 or 5 years into it, I actually started getting kind of good, and I started doing a few of the tournaments. So I say the real reason behind why I went is just for a bit of confidence and to learn a bit of discipline and that. Same as most kids step into martial arts. Those are the big reasons. I only really started seeing it as a proper competitive sport, in my early teens then, but before that I was learning really important life lessons, and I still do to this day, to be fair, but it was mainly for confidence. Yeah.
Do you think the fact that you had a brother and sister going along to the same club at the same time helped to keep you going as well?
Yeah, it made things way easier. I think I still would have gone if they didn't go. But the thing about it for us was, and my dad was so invested as well. My dad wasn't a guy that just dropped us off at the hall and then went into the van and read the newspaper or went off into the shopping. My dad would come in and sit in the hall, and he would almost like critique. Now, he sometimes might have seemed to overstep the mark, like, I was thinking he might be a bit of a coach, but he knew his stuff though too. He did a bit of kickboxing as well, but he would watch all our training sessions. He would drive us down all the time, and in the van on the way home, we have like this ritual. We'd always have a bit of the horrible yellow Lucozade, the stuff that's really bad for your teeth, and we had some wine gums as well, and we always had them on the way home. But we'd always have a dialogue about the training and how we went on, and what we did well. And so my dad was really invested in our training, and when we went home, we could talk about it. It's not like, I've seen it now with some other kids that I train, where the parents do support them and they drop them in and stuff, but like the kid would go, oh, I caught so and so with a spinning hook kick to the face, and the dad's like, is that good? Is that good? Well done. Yeah, that's really good. No, my dad, like, he knew his stuff, and he knew how we were doing in training. He was very clued in, so we had the support behind us that was just there from the get-go, and it really kept us all going for a long time. My sister had to stop at the age of 17, nearly 18, because of uh, problems relating to her having seizures, so she couldn't fight anymore. My brother stayed at it, and then he went on to box for the Marines. He still boxes for the Marines. And then we had two younger brothers, Owen and Finton, that stayed at it pretty much until they were in there. I think it was like 18, 19. And then I still obviously compete as well. So we stuck at it for a very long time. And I would put that down to the main factor being my dad, and Ian being such a great coach, you know,
Yeah.
really tremendous coach.
Funny enough, I think it makes some of it makes a big difference, because I remember when I would have started in taekwondo, like that, my dad would have, especially the early years, would have always sat down in the back of the class. And I remember when we came home, we'd spend 30, 40 minutes nearly redoing the class, nearly just going over what we had done in the class. Because like that, my dad would sit down, he'd listen to what Adrian, my coach, was saying, the way it was supposed to be done, and he'd have a look and try and see, did it look the same way that my coach was doing it. So, and that's it. So then you go back the next day and it would be better. And I think it's big like that it's not just you turn up to the club and you do the session and that's it, then you go home, and you don't think about it till the next day you come in. You're thinking about it at home, and it helps so much to improve.
Oh, it does. It's just having that dialogue at home is so good. Like, now, saying that though, there were days there where we're around the dinner table, and myself, my father, my brother and sister, and the two younger ones were all talking about kickboxing. And my mom was just kind of like sat there, like going, "Can we talk about something else, please?" You know.
Yeah,
uh, but it was so like and there was a time as well where I didn't want to do it anymore. I was 11, and I remember, I don't know what was going on with me that week, but I remember going, I'm sick of this. I'm sick of doing push-ups. I'm sick of doing this, and I hate it. And I remember going to my dad going, because I think a few of my friends had quit some of their sports before and they jumped into something else, and maybe I was trying to edge into that as well. And I think it was badminton or something. I wanted to try that. I was like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore, Dad. I'm sick of this and blah, blah, blah. And my dad was like, no. I was like, what do you mean no? He was like, no. He's like, I know what's best for you. You're going to thank me one day for sticking in the sport, and you're not going to go and quit and do something else. And I obviously argued with him. His job wasn't to be my friend then. It was to be a good dad that made me into a good person, who helped me steer into the right choices. And he obviously did. And I look back at that moment and go, wow, that could have been a real pivotal moment in my life if if I didn't have a stronger person behind me. And it would have been very easy for him to go, well, I don't have to pay for your classes, and then I don't need to drive you down all the way to Bantry every other day. So, you know what? Yeah, you can quit kickboxing. He could have been one of those dads, but he didn't. And I owe my whole life to that positive decision that my dad made. Like, I've got so much from my sport. I'm fit, I'm strong, I've got a job, I made so many good friends. It's made me a stronger person. I have a partner from it, and now I have a child from that partnership. So I have so much to owe for that one moment that my dad stood up, and he was really a good dad at that point, and it really shaped my whole life then.
Yeah. I think sometimes you probably even see yourself, there's too much, like you said, those reasons. I don't have to drive you, the money I'll save, and it's kind of, if they don't want to do it, sure, I'm not going to force them. But sometimes
Yeah,
you need to force them.
you do. They do need to kick up the hole sometimes, and like, one thing is, do you coach as well? Do you do
Yeah,
a bit of coaching?
with each
Yeah,
class.
so you get to meet all parents that come in the door, and I can almost tell straight away how far their talent is going to take them on their own. But really, a big part of being successful long term, over the long run of a career, is the parents, like how the parents are with them and supporting them. Because you could have a really good kid, and they could have like loads of talent and ability, but they'll have a day when they don't want to do it, and they need the support. They'll need their rock, their structure behind them, and the parent won't be there, and they'll quit, and they'll quit on something that was so good for them. And I see it all the time. And now the other side to that is, you can get pushy parents. You can get these parents that are like, they're over the top, and they put serious pressure on them, and the next thing is they don't want to do it anymore because they feel that it's not enjoyable anymore. And I kind of see that sometimes. I don't want to be like putting people in boxes or anything, but a lot of the Irish parents I see, a lot of them, I would say 60 to 70% of them would go, oh, this is my Johnny, he wants to give it a go. And that's fine, that's perfectly grand. But then I might see someone like a really intense parent from one of the Eastern Bloc countries, and they'd be like, "I want you to take my son. I want you to make him a fighter. I want you to make him strong." And it's like, oh man, two different, completely different kind of parents, and uh, it could go wrong in one if you lean too far on one side and not enough on the other, and so you need a balance. Like, you need to know when to step back and ease off them, and you need to know when they need to kick up the hole at those times as well, and really keep them going.
Yeah, I suppose it's that you need that Goldilocks effect, just right.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So did you,
Absolutely.
so did you do any other sports when you were growing up as a kid? Or was it
Yeah,
just
I
kick?
did. No, I did soccer. My dad was a soccer coach. I did soccer. I was a good swimmer. It was the only other sport I would say that I was good. Like, I wasn't naturally good at kickboxing. It took me a while to develop into that, but I was good. I was a good swimmer. I did GAA. I did a bit of boxing then, coming into my teens. What else did I do? There's a few other little things I did. I did a bit of rugby as well, but it was always mainly kickboxing. I think when I came to about, I think it was 13, 14, I had to make that decision. Do I keep going with soccer or do I keep going with kickboxing? And I would think I was leaning more towards kickboxing anyway, because I just got accepted onto the national team then anyway. So I was like, yeah, I want to do this. Um, and then I did boxing for a while, and that helped my hands. And then in the last 3 years, then I've been doing jiu-jitsu, which is amazing. It's a breath of fresh air now as well. I'm gone right back to being a white belt, so I have this new understanding for that new kid, that new person that steps into the class and wants to learn. So I've got a mindset of a white belt now again, which is really cool to have, and helps me really see things through the eyes of my students now a bit more as well.
Do you feel, yeah, so do you feel that helped? Do you feel that helps your teaching?
It does. It's really good for, like, I find it's just really good. It's just another feather to your cap, isn't it? But I really enjoy it. Like, I wholeheartedly enjoy it. A lot of people go into jiu-jitsu to go and step into MMA, but I really love jiu-jitsu for what it is and on its own. And it's just healthy to learn something new. I think it just have that other skill. Like, I don't take it nearly as seriously as kickboxing. I would say it's definitely more of a hobby, but I do every now and again let my obsessive side that I have in kickboxing kind of creep into jiu-jitsu, and I spend hours and hours on one particular technique that I really want to learn and watch over videos again and again. But I think that's just because I love it so much.
Yeah, but you need a healthy obsession more so. I think is what it is, isn't it?
Yeah. And like, I'm not just one person that would just obsess over one thing, really. I'm like, if I got into a really good book, I would obsess over that book, or a good TV show, or whatever it is. So, like, I kind of just sink into what I'm doing or what I'm paying attention to. Do you know what I mean? But as long as I have a general first spark of interest, I'll tend to stick at it, like most people, really. You know.
Yeah. So then, when you kind of first got onto the national team, would that have been competing as a junior?
Yeah. So I was, I think it was 14. Um, yeah. I was training with the Irish team a year before that on some of the training camps, but then I joined the team then the year after that, and I've pretty much been on the team since then. Obviously, I took a break then when I was it 22, and I joined the GB Olympic Taekwondo program out in Manchester. But every other year by those years, I was on the team, and yeah, it was really good. Obviously, I got the best spars in the country, and I got to meet other coaches and learn other things, and it was a really good transitional period in my life when I got to kind of go from treating it more like a serious hobby into, okay, this is my passion now. This is how I define myself.
And were you successful straight away once you stepped onto the national team, or was there a couple of years where it took you to kind of increase your level to be able to win medals?
No, actually, I was successful straight away. I was really lucky in that regard because I wasn't in my first few competitions ever, period. But my first time international was 2005, and I won. And then I won 2006, and then 2007 I got silver. But like, Ian, my trainer, he keyed in on one thing I was really good at, and we really made that very, very sharp, very formidable. He gave me like a really good front leg weapon, so that was a problem straight away for most fighters to get around. Like, we start at distance. I have a distance way of controlling. it's up to them to get around it. So I imposed that really well when I was a young teenager. As I got older, fighters got smarter as well, so I had to up my game again. And like I definitely had tournaments I lost in nationally, but when it came to the international, Ian always had me real ready and really sharp, and I knew what to do, you know, at the right time. So Ian was very good at making me peak at the right time, and he didn't make me into a one-trick pony as well. Like, so he would always be adding stuff to my game, and I'd be getting really, really good spars down in my club. You know, there would be guys coming up as well with me, so it wasn't just me. It was like my brother and my sister. You know, Aidan Kingston, Connor Pullen. You know, all these guys. They'd all be going up as well and improving. So we'd all kind of like improve together, and we'd be bouncing off each other doing test matches and stuff. So we were always tested, and Ian kept putting things in front of us like, okay, fitness tests and checking our weight and getting test matches organized. So Ian was really good at getting us ready and prepped for the right time in the year, you know?
Yeah, and I know Ian's club there is mostly light contact. Would you have tried out points at any point in time?
I did points when I was 15. So in 2006, I actually won. I won the older cadet world title in points. I never kept it. I didn't keep it going after that. I think Ian was trying to steer me into continuous. So yeah, I didn't stick at it for too long. Like, you know, we're a continuous club, you know, and we don't really specialize in points. But we, like myself, I would still go in and fight well enough in points. I wouldn't be completely overwhelmed, I think, by, well, maybe I would now at this point. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the last big time I really did points properly and seriously was 2006, and you know, that was a long time ago. After that, it's always been continuous. So yeah, we were mainly continuous club, so that's where we were going anyway. You know.
Yeah. Did you find much of a transition from like that from junior to senior, or again, would you have been successful straight away stepping in as a senior?
Yeah, I don't mean to toot my own horn, but I was actually successful going from junior to senior. Again, I won 2009. I won the Europeans at 63 kg, and then stepping into adult. Um, Now I was like, there was a lot of things wrong with my game that year because I was really exposed. Like as a junior, I was comfy, but when I went into, I remember it was Villach in Austria. I went to compete in the World Championships in 2009, and they were just really strong guys. Like there was a bit of a shock getting hit by a guy your own weight as a kid, as a, you know, a junior is one thing, but then when they're an adult and they're fully grown and they've developed muscle and they've got that much more snap to their shots, it kind of was like, whoa. But again, I had a style that kind of really suited me, and it was, you know, people still found it difficult to get around. It was messy. It wasn't clean. Like it wasn't like a clean, good win. Like looking back at it, it was all over the place. But I still managed to win on all my fights on points, and I won senior. The next year I fought better than that, and then the next year I actually lost. It was the first big um, loss of my senior career. So if you're talking about WAKO's European and Worlds up until 2012, there was only two fights I ever lost, and that was one in 2007, like I said, in the final, which was a bit questionable. But then in 2011, I really lost. I went out there not ready. I went out there with an injury. I had sponsorship for the first time that year, so I really was compelled to fight. And it was actually really funny because I remember it was Russia round one. I went in there, I had a really dodgy knee, and I remember Ian, my trainer, was in the corner, but Thomas Brada sat down next to Ian. And Thomas normally likes to sit down with the guys he thinks he's going to win and coach and stuff, and he likes to be around the winners. And I'd won the 2 years before that, and I stepped into the 69 kg division that year. And I remember him going, okay, you need to keep this guy away with your front leg now. And I just remember turning around and taking my gum shield out and going, I can't, my knee's banjaxed, I can't kick at all. And I just remember him going, oh, like seeing it on his face, like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be sat next to your coach to watch you lose, you know. And I did lose. It was really close. I made my knee a whole lot worse because I did try and kick him in the end. But it was the one big stain I had on my whole career. It was the first and the only time I ever lost first round in the WAKOs. Um, but yeah, no, the transition from junior to senior was, yeah, it was tough. Like it took me a few years to really get the feet underneath me and understand the power behind their shots and work with and fight seniors regularly, you know.
Yeah. Do you feel that there was maybe even a bit more like mental pressure? Like they said, the first year you had sponsorship and you hadn't lost in a bit of time. Or do you think it was mostly down to the
Yeah,
injury?
yeah. That one year, 2011, was a weird one because it was the first real injury I had, like that took me out months and months out of training. But as in going from junior to senior the first time in 2009, yeah, like I had this like book, like a notes that I wrote down and I read religiously, and it helped me get into the frame of mind. I'm always weakest in my first fights, my first fight of every tournament. But usually by the end, I've won a few fights. I've got a real confidence behind me, and I've got this real focus and grit. And I just found that I had that in my last fight. Now I've only really figured that out in the last few years, why and how to tap into that and get that out of me in my first fights. But uh, if I remember a fella said to me, he said, like, if you're going to lose any fight at the WAKOs, it's going to be your first fight, really, because that's when you perform at your weakest. And he was right. And yeah, yeah, just learning as you go, I suppose.
And what kind of, what sort of notes would have been in that, would have been in that book? Would it have been anything tactical, or would it have been more like mental thoughts, or?
No, Ian would be purely tactical from what he would tell me. I'd have nothing written down on tactics. It would all be mental. So what was written down mentally was it was more like a guide of learning to accept things for what they are. Like, so it was a big thing on understanding that winning and losing isn't ultimately up to you. Like, you can influence it, but it's not up to you. Like, you could do your absolute best and have your best fight and still lose, and it's important to be happy over that. And it was like actually taking a step back and looking about what things you can control. So before, I would stress about who's watching, who's recording me, what my opponent can do, what the referee is like. Is he favorable to, whatever, or is he going to be hard on me for this tactic or whatever? And then the judges, and it's more like stepping back and go, okay, what can I actually control? And when you write it down and you understand, look, this is what you can influence and this is how you can make it ultimately your best chance of winning, it became a whole lot more relaxing. So like, I think it came down to three things. It was like, listen to Ian, with enjoy myself, and do my best, perform at my best, because I can't control what the other judges do. I can't control my other fighter, my opponent. And once I started understanding and focusing on the elements I can control, I tend to put in better performances than other days.
Yeah. I think like in a sport like that, and even taekwondo is, it's like you said, you can have your best performance and still not win, because like you said, you can't essentially knock the guy out. So it's like, in others, maybe like in MMA or boxing, if you leave the guy unconscious, well, then you're clearly winner. But when it comes down to judges and other stuff, it can be out of your control. So sometimes it
Oh,
just
absolutely.
just comes down to on the day. Now, I suppose you would maybe like to think that, it comes down to a little bit more than just on the day, because like otherwise, what are you training for? Like, you just turn up. But I suppose you have to put yourself in position to win, and all that, and put yourself through the hard training. But at the end of the day, sometimes it does just come down to on the day.
Yeah. Just being as ready as you can be, and putting your best foot forward. Visualization goes an awful long way as well. If you can do that, that's something I did as well. An awful lot of is visualization. Like, if you put yourself in there and you're on the mat and you're seeing everything and you built it into your shadow sparring. By the time you step in front of that person, you've been there so many times before in your head. Your body doesn't know the difference. Like, so, like, you'd have that spike in adrenaline, but you've been there before and you're ready, and this is nothing new to you. So that was a big thing as well in getting me ready for my fights. Um, and like, I mean, one guy told me before, like, oh, this is because when I was in GB Taekwondo, my boss would always compare us to the cycling team. The British cyclists were the best in the world. They've won the most medals and stuff, and this is what they contribute to, and this is how they think before they go in. And I would sometimes disagree with how he goes about saying it and their thought process, because it might work for them in their sport. And it's, like, if you've got someone who's just running in a straight line, they've got 100-meter sprint to go and they got to get themselves completely ready mentally. It's still, person next to you, they don't go into your lane necessarily. It's you against the elements. It's not like you're tactically against someone who can move this way and do this and hit you. And like, so when you're in a sport where it's you against the elements, like a sprint, a straight sprint, yeah, then the little tiny things might count. But I think in a sport like boxing or kickboxing or taekwondo, there's so many different variables that can influence the winning and losing process. So I think you have to make it simpler for a sport like kickboxing, and you might want to think more in depth then, and maybe a little bit more complicated on the little things than on the 100-meter sprint. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, like because there's just so many moving parts in a sport like that. Whereas, like you said, if you're a sprinter, if you're a cyclist, it doesn't. If you cycle or you run your best time, then that's what counts. To some degree.
Yeah.
If that happens to be the fastest, then that's great. But it doesn't work out like that in our sports.
No. Yeah, like I said, it's just too many variable factors. You know. But that's why I love it so much. You know,
Yeah,
and you can go. You can go in there with one mindset and leave with another. You can go in there with an injury, fight your best and your heart out. You could lose, but you could be. Some of my fighters that have fought and competed, some of their best fights they've lost, and I always remind them that you're gonna go through these days. You're gonna go through these days where you lose, and it's how you approach the losing process that'll drive you on. That'll make you better. Because there's definitely a lot of people out there when they lose, they think that's it, and they're very hard on themselves. And there's coaches that like to assess straight away. So I had a coach like that as well when I was doing taekwondo. It was I would lose, and then straight away on the side of the mat, he'd be telling me what I did wrong and asking me questions, and I'd be like, I just want distance from what just happened, and I need to clear my head and assess myself. I don't want to be looking at it when I'm emotional after I've lost. I'm pissed off that I lost. So it's not a good time to go evaluating yourself then and evaluating your performance,
yeah. I suppose that's some bit part of the art of coaching, isn't it? Like being able to read the athlete. That I suppose some athletes maybe like to analyze the performance straight away. Others like to be left and maybe soak it in and analyze it with a clear head. So it comes down to it's up to the coach to kind of recognize that.
Yeah, I remember we had a guy in our club who was fighting, and he would always need to kick up the hole before he fought. He would need to be Ian would need to get into his face almost and be like, all right, you need to do this. And, it'd take him almost a round to really get into it, or he'd be a good hard shot before he would start really thinking and going, oh yeah, this is a fight, I better go to work. Whereas people like myself and Lily Delacour, we would be going in there probably thinking a bit too much, and we would need to be calmed a little bit more. And that Ian was really good at approaching us in that way. I remember in 2010, I had this really important fight. I was in the final against Russia. It was going to be a tough fight. And I think the fight was going to be delayed by 2 hours, and we were all warm and ready to go. And I was in fight mode then, but I didn't need to be, because if I stayed in fight mode for 2 hours, I'd burn myself out mentally. So I remember Ian just sat down with me and talked to me about everything that wasn't kickboxing: food, girlfriends, movies, absolute shite. And he took my head away from where I was and completely relaxed me. And then 15 minutes again before we were to go on, he would switch it on and talk to me again about tactics. And I think that's a sign of a good coach, when you can read your fighter, get in their head and get them to that right place on the day.
Yeah. And you mentioned like you practice some visualization and stuff like that. Would you have worked with a sports psychologist, or was that something maybe you read or watched videos on that you kind of did a bit of self-learning with, or would
Yeah,
you have worked with some professional?
I had like with GB Taekwondo, they had their own site coach, very knowledgeable, very good. In Ireland, when I was doing kickboxing prior to that, I had a really good. I guess he would be a site coach as well. His name's Caleb. Brilliant guy. Like I don't think he has a huge qualification, but he's just read an awful lot about the subject, and he knows he knows an awful lot, an awful lot more than me. And he started off with me as like a kind of a strength and conditioning coach, but I was more interested in what he knew about the mental side. And he would always break things down very, very easy for me to understand. And he really helped shape my way of thinking and how I mentally was approaching fights. You know, and a big thing he talked about was understanding you can't control your thoughts. And when people say just think positively, he knew that it was bullshit. You know, he knew that that was nonsense. Because if I said to you now, um, don't think of a pink elephant, what are you going to think about?
Yeah, you're going to take out the pink elephant.
You are, of course. And he knew that everyone goes through this, especially when you're in fight mode or flight mode. You're nervous. You're thinking about things. You know, your brain is a muscle and it's firing fast. And he helped me understand that these are normal. Anything and everything can pop into your head. Doubts and insecurities and what you did last week and all this stuff that doesn't matter right now. And he kind of really explained things that, look, this is normal. You know, people, this is just your brain overworking, and you just need to calm it down. And the same way you calm down your heart rate by just breathing and relaxing. So a big thing was talking to yourself, you know, positive affirmations and stuff like that. And get it, like, if you can talk about it, you can direct your thinking towards that. And like almost seeing negative thoughts as a bus. Like, this is the way he described it. Like, imagine it's a bus. A thought comes by and you're thinking before you fight and you go, nope, that's not my bus, that's not my thought, I don't need that. So you just let it go. So the thing wasn't about controlling it, it was just about accepting it and letting it pass, and try and refocus on what I needed to do by talking about tactics or positive affirmations, and doing that over and over again. It's like you brainwash yourself into getting mentally prepared for the state of mind you need to be in. So Caleb was really good in that regard, and he broke things down very easy for me to understand. And a lot of the stuff that he talks about, I get him to coach my students, my young guys, and I get him doing like mental fitness talks with them. And even some of the stuff he comes out with now, I'm still going, wow, that's a really good way of thinking about it. You know, a lot of the stuff he talks about has been said before, but he delivers it in a way that's so easy, and it's, you know, it just clicks with you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, that's what you need really, is somebody to break it down simple. I suppose, like, there's nothing new, and you can hear. It's how many different ways can you hear the same thing? Like, it's to try and find the one that kind of clicks with you, I suppose, and resonates and makes sense for you.
That's it. I could teach my guys something and I could be saying the same thing over and over again for 8 weeks. And then I have Ian Kingston to come over and he would say it the same thing, but in a slightly different way. And it would click with all of them and go, wow, okay, that's a much better way of putting it than I did. And now it sits with them. And that's the amazing thing about coaching. You know, not one person has got all the answers for all the students. You need to kind of encourage them to work with other people a little bit as well. You know, one main coach, but you have a load of other guys that can influence them as well. And having those influencers, those positive influences in their life, like I can't remember who told me this, but he said any one person are a product of the top five most the closest five people in their life. You know, so like if you're around four assholes, your chances are you're going to be the fifth. You know, or if you're surrounded by five guys or five teammates that are just so positive and supportive and lovely and cheerful, you're going to take on a little bit of what each of them have, you know. And that's why the best teams out there, they all gel so well.
Yeah, and success breeds success. That kind of sort of stuff. That positive mindset breeds that positive mindset.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And so you've mentioned a couple of times already your time with GB Taekwondo. How did that kind of come about?
So I won everything I needed to win in kickboxing in 20. So between 2009 and 2012, I won 2 Europeans and 1 Senior Worlds, and I won it all very early. And I came home, and I remember 2009 I won. I was still doing my leaving cert, and I remember coming home and just there was nothing was made of it, and I was a bit disappointing because I put my heart and soul into it, and I was still very young. And I remember coming back, and I was in maths class, and my teacher goes, "Where's your work?" I was like, "Oh, I was away in Austria for the last week, and I didn't have a chance. And she's like, oh, what were you doing? I was doing kickboxing. Remember, I told you, and I won gold for Ireland. This is such a big deal. And first Irish guy to do it in continuous ever, I think. And she goes, all right, well done. But do you have your homework done? No. Oh, okay, you'll need to catch up in detention. So I was kind of felt like, what? So when I came home, there was always a big deal made of the local football team or the local rugby team or whatever, but there was nothing for kickboxing. Like I remember going in the parade and down the Bantry St. Patrick's Day parade, and I remember one person was clapping for me, going, "Well done on your karate boxing," and I'm like, okay, this is annoying, and so I was like, okay, what can I do to show these fuckers, how good I am and get that notoriety? And it was a very childish way of thinking. But again, I was basically a big kid. I was only just turned 18. I was just a giant boy, really. And I said, okay, I want to go to the Olympics. That's the next step for me. I want to go to the Olympics. I want to get a gold medal. I want to show everyone who I am. And Irish team, I went and joined the Irish team and did a training camp with the Irish team. I did really well. But to go to the tournaments with the Irish team, they're not funded. So they were like, oh, you need to do this, 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 and this competition. And it's going to cost like 6-7 grand to do. And I'm like, oh my God, like to get sponsorship, that much money, and it'd be very tough. And I want to also go to college. And so that wasn't going to happen. And so I was a bit dismayed. And I went back. I was doing a little bit of kickboxing, and I was also training with a club out in the UK called Team Blue Blood. And there was a fella on their team, Darren Chapman, who was trying out for the Olympic Taekwondo team out there at the time. And I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. And how did this come about? Well, the game in Taekwondo at the time had changed. So they were doing, they just changed the rules in 2008 about, I think it was headshots were now 3 points instead of 1. And they introduced Bluetooth body sensors and stuff like this. And so front leg kickers were winning and doing really well. So they were looking to new styles to bring on into their academy out in the UK, because they noticed that the front leg game was winning. And who had the best front legs in the world? Well, it wasn't necessarily their guys. They were very good at spins and doubles and triples and 360s, but not a whole pile of them, bar Paul Green, I would think, had a really good front leg game. But if you look at ITF and points fighters and kickboxers, there was a lot of guys who had really good front leg control, So this is what they did. They did a fighting chance, they call it fighting chance program. So they invited other martial arts, even their own WTF, to come in to do a bit of, it was like trials. So the first week was like you fight another guy from another kind of sport like ITF or kickboxing. You fight but under their WTF rules, and then you did like how many kicks you can do in a minute and how flexible you are, and they checked your weight and all this other stuff. And they did it like that, and they did it in like three phases. And I remember Darren was going to do one, and I remember going and watching him and going, geez, I could do this. And I have a British passport. I was born in the UK, so I was like, okay. And I got the English coach who I was training with at the time, Avender, who was in charge of the Blue Blood team. I got him to write a letter, I think it was, to Paul Green, and they said, look, the weight division for you, the trials have been closed. So they said, look, you can't do this trials with the 68 kg division, but you can try and go in with the heavyweights. I said, I'll fight anyone, fine, I'll do it and see how I get on. I went over and I fought with the bigger lads, and I won my first match. And they were really impressed with me, and they invited me back. And then I think it was for the second trial, it was like 2 fights and more questions and interviews and weight checking and stuff like that. And then I did well in that too. And then it came to the third trial, and the third trial was you train with them for a week. So I went out there to live over there like for a week in Manchester, and there was a huge pod of us. There was a featherweight group, a lightweight group, and the all the way up. And they did it with the girls as well. And we all trained together, and we trained with their coaches, and they thought, okay, how coachable is each fighter, and how well, blah blah blah. And there were all these different factors. And in the end, I had 3 fights, and I won 2, and I lost the last one. And I got the invite. So I think it was around August then, 2013. I got the nod, and they said, look, you know, you can make your way over to Manchester now. We have a house and we have a kit for you and everything else and a wage. So I was like, wow, okay, they pay for my flights, they pay for my accommodation, they pay for everything, and all I have to do is train. So it was a dream come true for me. And so I went there going, yeah, I'm gonna smash this, and I'm gonna get my gold medal, and I'm gonna get this fame that I crave, and I'm gonna do so well. So I went over to Manchester, and yeah, it was not what I thought it would be. I really enjoyed the training, and it made me a much better kicker, but it was really ruthless. The training was really like, um, we would almost do test matches every week, and it was really tough like that, and I loved that. I got an awful lot of injuries along the way, and uh, I won the Greek Open. I got a bronze in Luxembourg, and then I got a bronze in the Commonwealth Games. I got knocked out actually in the semi-finals. So like, one thing I found about me was I wasn't as adaptable to that sport as I thought I might. So I was really structured in kickboxing, and I had learned so many good things for kickboxing that were bad habits for WTF Taekwondo, for Olympic Taekwondo. And I found it was very hard to get out of those old habits. And I just didn't win enough, and I just wasn't good enough, plain and simple. And you know, I was a very big fish in a small pond in kickboxing, but you know, going into Olympic Taekwondo was another step up again. And like, I did well, and I'd definitely make a good club fighter, but getting to the Grand Prix and world and European championships for selection wasn't going to happen for me. Although I did improve, and I really did my best, it wasn't enough. And so I realized, I think it was sometime in 2000 and late 2015, that there wasn't going to be a chance that I would get to Rio. It wasn't going to happen. I didn't have enough Olympic ranking points. None of the 68 fighters actually were good enough to go, which was a bit disheartening, really. So none of us were going to go, and I had to make the decision if I'm going to stay on for 2020. And geez, what was I? I was 25 at the time, and I was like, okay, do I want to do this for another 4 years, and on the chance I might go to the Olympics? I was like, I don't know. And I had a girlfriend back home, and I had my trainer Ian as well, and there was an awful lot of things I was missing. I was missing my old sport, and I was, you know, I was really missing that. One thing though that was a positive light to me was, before the Rio Olympics, there was a few foreign teams that came to go and compete with us, and they knew that none of the 68 male competitors were going to the Olympics. So it was almost like they were using us to train without having to worry about coming up against us in Rio. So all of the 68s, bar myself, were injured at the time. And I remember I got put training with this Jordanese player. So he came all the way from Jordan, and two of them actually, there was himself and another training partner. And then there was a few Koreans and a few Cuban guys. So I got to training with all these guys, but it was mainly this Jordanese guy that I was training with. And I was going, wow, this guy's really good. And there was a few times where I got the better of him, and we were fairly matched. And I knew he was going to the Olympics, but I knew he would be coming up against the Korean guy. His name's Lee Dae-hoon. I knew he'd be coming up against him in his second match, and I kind of like wrote him off, like, he's not going to beat him. He's too good. And what do you know? The Jordanese guy won his first match, and then he beat the Korean, and then he beat this other guy, I can't remember who it was, and then he beat the Russian in the finals. So that Jordanese player actually went on to win the Olympics at 68, and I was his sparring partner the months prior to it. And I was going, wow, you know, and I was thinking, like, you know, but towards the end, there wasn't that much between us. Like, he had a whole lot more experience, but there was some spars we had were really close. And, you know, I got a few nice shots and digs on him, and I was going, you know, another 4 years, I could be beating this guy. And if he's the standard, you know, so I was really weighing it up, and I was going, okay, I'm good enough to be here, but do I want to stay here for another 4 years and possibly waste 4 years? And I was really weighing that up. And so I said to myself, I'd do it. I would stay another 4 years, and I was training. I was training through 2016. We came back early after the Olympics, and we were training away and very serious. I remember one day I woke up and I was going, I miss home. I miss family. They're talking about not letting me go home on weekends now. Like once a month I might go home to see my family, but now they're on about me training on Saturdays, and then so I'd have to fly Saturday night and come home Sunday night, which means I basically get a day with my family once a month. And my wages had dropped as well because I had lost my recent tournament in Luxembourg. I got a bronze instead of a gold or silver, and I had problems at home with family members. So there's an awful lot of things pointing me to go home. And I just remember one day I was cycling to training and was going, I don't want to be here. And I cycled home. I rang up my trainer who wasn't at the gym at the time and said, I don't want to be here anymore. I want to go home. I want to go back to kickboxing. I want to spend time with my family. I want to spend time with my partner, because at the time my partner was like, you know, Tony, I'm older than you. Breda, she was like, you know, I want to get on with my life. You know, I'm not going to sit around waiting for you to, you know whether you're going to stay or not or leave, or I'm not going to wait until 2020, because I want kids. I want to see the world as well. I want to travel. So I completely understood that if I stayed in Manchester, I was at risk of losing someone I'd been with, 6 years prior, So it was tough, but I came to the conclusion that I needed to leave. And looking back at it, the last year over in Manchester, I was very unhappy. I was very I hate to use the word depressed, but I wasn't seeing my family. I wasn't enjoying the sport. And looking back at the whole thing, I joined the sport not for the reasons that you should join a sport. I did Taekwondo not because I love the sport. I did it because I wanted to go and win an Olympic gold medal and show off and be the big man. I didn't do it because I loved it. If it was karate, I would have done karate. If it was Muay Thai, it would have been that. I would have done Muay Thai. I did it because I wanted a gold medal. And I think straight away that was a shaky foundation from the start to go into the sport. And it was only when I came home I really realized what I was missing and how unhappy I was over there. And I really settled back into my sport and became happy again. And I thought to myself, geez, I'm going to look back at this and I'm going to regret it. But I actually haven't regretted it once. In the 4 and a bit years, I think 4 years now, nearly 4 years I've been home, I haven't regretted it once. I'm really happy with the decision I made, and that's an easy thing to say, which I thought wouldn't be in the position I am now looking back. But that was, sorry for going off on a big rant, but that's the whole mentality and the whole story of me doing Olympic Taekwondo and chasing the Olympic dream.
Oh no, it was more than happy. It was a good story. It is a good part. Like, I suppose good in parts. I suppose it maybe didn't end the way you initially planned it. Like that, do you regret it at all? Like, do you regret? I know you said you maybe don't regret coming home, but do you regret going in the first place, that you chased it for the wrong reason?
I absolutely did not, because if I didn't go, I would blame other people. Like if I didn't go because my girlfriend, I would have blamed her for not trying it. And I needed to go out there and see what my metal was, see what my metal was worth, and see if I could do it. I needed to go out there and I needed to fail. I needed to go out there into a bigger bubble and a bigger pond and see what I really am, and can I be adaptable and can I learn. And I learned an awful lot and I improved a lot and I learned loads of really important life lessons. And it definitely humbled me in a lot of other ways as well. And looking back at it, I would go at it again for all the lessons that I learned. Like I wouldn't, like if I had a time machine and go back, I wouldn't try and steer myself away from it, because it was absolutely necessary for my growth. It was absolutely necessary to improve and develop. And it's like that college student that comes out of college and they can go straight into work and live in their bubble, or they can go out, take a year out and go and travel and see the world and learn what it is to be an adult and a functioning adult, and take the shit job and go out with the shitty girlfriend or whatever it is. They go out there and they pay their dues. And I felt like I paid my dues when I went over there, and I struggled, but it made me a better person for it.
Yeah. And did you find it hard coming back from a sport where, like you said, you were being paid to train and you had all the best facilities, you had a sports psychologist, a nutritionist, all this sort of stuff, to coming back to it's completely unfunded? Then in kickboxing, you're having to, you want to be professional, but it's a lot harder to be when you don't have a lot of the supports that you would have had in the GB Taekwondo.
Like GB Taekwondo are really supportive and they're really good, but it was like this thing, especially amongst the male competitors, it was like this thing where if you started complaining that you thought you were overtraining or you were too tired, you were seen as like a whinger. Like there was no, like everyone was feeling it. Everyone was feeling tired, and there were days when you just didn't want to train. Like, and like you'd get nothing out of yourself. You're beating a dead horse, but you still had to train anyway. And no one kind of was like, I need a day off. Like I need to relax. Not many people were doing that. And if you were seen to do that or do it too much, you were like, you know, this guy's a pussy. He doesn't want to be here, you know. And that was the attitude. Like it was like, you know, you either want to be here, you don't. More was always better. More was always better. And there were definitely rewards for the guys who were doing well, but there was nothing for guys who didn't bring back the medals. Like, so I remember, like I remember going, there was a fella, now I'm not going to name names, but there was people at the lighter division than me, and they weren't going to Rio either, and we were going to our training camp in Korea. And I remember going, oh, you know, I need to pick up more points if I want to go to this European qualifiers or whatever it is, and I want to get money for this. And they were like, no, it's not going to happen, you know, we're not going to fund you, or you have to pay it yourself. I'm going, fuck's sake, I can't afford that, and I can't pay for this and go home and go to these tournaments. And I think there was 2 tournaments at the very end before I left that I actually paid for out of my own pocket to go, because I was desperate to try and pick up Olympic qualifying points. And they were saying, look, we can't fund you. But then this other fighter who was sick a day before we were all to go to Korea, they flew him out to Korea a day later, and they flew him first class, which is like a first class flight from London to Korea is like thousands of euros. You're talking like 4,000, maybe 3,000 pounds to fly first class. And I'm going, you're telling me you can't afford to go to this tournament? You're willing to pay that much? Sorry, just yeah. So like there was a lot of that, and there was a lot of like there was a lot of biases that I didn't appreciate as well. And you know, they definitely had their favorites, and I can understand why they did, but you know, it definitely got on my nerves. And then seeing that, and then going home, and then going back to those people like I spoke about earlier, like my dad, like my coach, who have been with you since the start, who support you in other ways than just money. It was a breath of fresh air, and it was knowing that no matter how much I failed or got it wrong, I wasn't going to get punished. I wasn't going to lose money. I wasn't going to, you know, I wasn't not going to go to this tournament or that. You know, if it was, that meant more to me than what I was getting in Manchester. You know.
And when you came back, did you take some time away from?
2 seconds now. Sorry, 2 seconds, Jamie. For some reason, my volume's after going off. I think it was that phone call. Can you speak again there now? See if that improves.
Yeah, can you hear me? So
no, something's going on. 2 seconds. All right, try again.
no, can you hear me?
No. What I might do there, I've got my earphones. 2 seconds. I might just stick my earphones in there. 2 seconds.
No worries. So actually, what I was just going to say is, so when you came back then from Manchester, did you take any time away from training, just to be with family, or did you get straight back into kickboxing again?
I took about 2 weeks off. I didn't do anything. I just spent time with my family. Started like making a future with myself and my partner Breda. You know, we'd been together for so long prior to that, and we had a long 4-year long distance relationship going. So our dynamic was going to change hugely in the next few weeks. So like I really worked on that, and yeah, I spent time with my family, and like I had to work on a few things with my family as well for reasons. That's why another reason why I had to leave Manchester. But like you know, I definitely took a bit of time off, and then I went back into it. But I went back into it at my own pace, and I came back in with a mentality where I'm not training for anything. I'm enjoying training. I'm just doing it because I love it, and I haven't had that feeling. I haven't had that feeling in a while. So it was a breath of fresh air to go through, you know. And yeah, so 2 weeks off, and then I went back into at my own pace.
Yes, like that when you got back, was a kind of maybe a moment where you went, this is what I've been missing?
Yeah, it was the atmosphere of the club, my family. It was the support behind me back home, and yeah, it was those things that I really missed. And it was only when I got perspective and saw how happy I was when I came back to Ireland that I realized, okay, you know, I wasn't right over there. I wasn't really happy. I wasn't all, you know, I was probably a little bit depressed, you know, just missing home. Also living in Manchester, I don't like Manchester. Like I was born in Manchester myself, but I don't like it. I love the nightlife and that, but I miss not seeing the ocean and the sea every day. Like I live in West Cork, so you know it's really really nice and scenic down here. And every time I come home, I'm like, oh man, like I miss this so much. And I realized how beautiful a little spot in West Cork, you know, like where I live is, and you know I really appreciate it all the more now.
Yeah, there's a different air in Ireland. I always find it when you get off the plane and you're hit with that air, and
Yeah.
you could only have came from England, which you'd expect it's the same, but it's not.
Well, one thing I noticed is when I was in Manchester, I weirdest thing is I can only ever breathe through one nostril at a time. I don't know what it is, but I can only ever breathe through one nostril at a time. But when I was in the UK, I could breathe through both. But when I come to Ireland, then and especially when I hadn't been in Ireland in a while, like my eyes were itchy, my nose is blocked up, and it's from the pollen. And there's way more flowers, there's way more trees, there's way more like just nature over here, you know, in Ireland, and proper salt air, and you know, it's how it should be, you know. And I don't mind having a bit of a blocked nose if I want to, you know, for living in West Cork. But geez, going back to Manchester, then it was just smoke and cars and you know highways and buildings and stuff, you know. And I remember, you know, walking past this fella, and he was playing with his daughter out in a car park right outside his flats, you know, and he had to stay with her. He couldn't leave her on her own, you know, out in Manchester to play in the car park. You know, there's no chance you could do that, you know. But in, you know, if you live in West Cork, you know, there's a park down the road, or there's a garden somewhere, or there's a friend's down the road, or you know, it's a lot safer. It's just a lot quieter, a lot more relaxed, you know.
Yeah, so some of the stuff you maybe don't think of at the time, and like when you're only in one place, like when you're just in West Cork, you maybe would have taken that, I suppose, maybe for granted. It's only when you see another environment that you realize is that park there isn't that great to have.
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. Like I missed seeing the ocean every day when I was over there.
Yeah, and what was the first championships you came back for in kickboxing?
I did. I don't think I fought in 2016, did I? I fought in 2017. I did. I lost to Adam Shelley in light contact, but I qualified in low kick, and I got a bronze um, out there in the world. And then I went out to 2018. Where's 2018? 2018, then I think was Slovenia. And I got a bronze out there in continuous again. So I got two bronzes, European and world. Not the result I wanted. And you know, I took a step back going, okay, what am I doing wrong and what's going on? And, you know, like I definitely learned a lot of good things from doing Olympic Taekwondo, but my hands weren't firing properly. And, you know, there was a big question of, is my style relevant? And, you know, can I still win? So like 2019 was a big year. I upped my training, but I trained smarter as well. So I didn't overdo it. I didn't allow myself to be injured before going out there or overtraining. So it was really smart how I did my training and approach. And then 2019, I won gold. So I had 5 fights over there. I beat a Russian guy that was pretty much our one guy. One other guy beat him once the year before, but pretty much everyone else, I think that Russian guy steamrolled through or beat pretty close. Like I think he beat Adam Shelley twice, but they were both very close. And even the last one, I thought Adam nicked it, but he was the guy to beat. And I remember going out there and fighting him, and it was like the visualization I spoke about before. I imagined myself fighting him so many times prior in my shadow boxing that when I went actually out there and fought him, he definitely underestimated me. But like I matched his intensity, and I just outscored him. But it felt really natural and comfortable in there. You know, it didn't feel like he overpressured me. Everything worked, and it was probably one of my best fights I ever fought.
Yeah, I've seen I've seen the Russian guy like that. I watched a couple of his fights with Adam, and I've seen a couple of his other fights, and the intensity he does bring is quite high, especially across the 3 rounds and in the smaller ring.
Yeah, like
So,
now saying that though, I think 2 years ago when he fought Adam, he was much fitter and stronger. Like I was looking at him 2 years ago and was going, he doesn't stop. There's no off button on this guy. Like he's not smart, really smart. I would say he just goes forward. He goes forward and overwhelms you. He smothers you. And he definitely had more to him. I think 2 years ago. And I think I remember saying this to Adam. I said I think he's on it. I think he's on the stuff. I think he's got another 20-30% in him than me or you have. And I'm going like he's definitely on something. And it can't just be altitude training or whatever the Russians claim that he's doing. I don't believe that. So I remember him thinking like he must be on something. Like because I have never seen anyone be that fit and that strong over 3 rounds before, and give Adam such a hard time. And yeah, even a few people have said to me like he looks like whatever he was on, he's off, because he seemed a little bit flatter with me. But in my fight against him, I remember someone saying, "Oh, he just comes at you really fast, but he doesn't hit you really hard." And going, "What? He doesn't hit really hard? Okay." And I remember he hit me in the first round and going, "Oh, you guys lied to me. That really hurt." And then, no, what my tactic was with him was match his intensity with my hands. So no matter what, just throw with him, just throw hands with him. And on the way in and out, get your head kick, get your body kick, get something on the way in and out, but match his intensity. Don't be a bag. And sorry, seconds. You've probably gone quiet again because I had another call. Can you speak there?
yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, 2 seconds now. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
All right. You gone quiet again. Sorry. 2 seconds. 2 seconds now. Sorry about this.
No worries.
Try it now.
Are we good?
No, quiet again. Sorry. Um. Let me think now.
It's only on your end because I can hear you. I can hear you perfect all the time.
All right. Okay. I might have to lean in a bit closer for your questions, but anyway, carry on. What I was saying was I remember like just kind of matching him for intensity on punches and then finishing with a head or a kick, a kick to the head of the body, and um, and then what was it? Yeah, I remember at one point he was fighting me or whatever, and I said to Ian I think it was going into the second round, was okay, I'm getting tired now, so I might just tuck up, and I just completely shut shop and not. I didn't let him have anything, and he just hit my guard with like 12 or 13 punches. And I remember him stepping back, and I remember just glancing over at the scoreboard going, he got nothing for that, as he should. And I just remember this puzzled look on his face, and I remember thinking, oh, I have you now. I know what it is. So it was, when I was tired, I tucked up, and I threw shots when I thought it was open. And at other times then I matched his intensity. And then I obviously got my head kick. And then in the third round, he was a little bit more desperate and coming forward, and he would kick, but then there was a big drop between his leg and his hands. And when he'd come in with his hands, there was a little bit of a gap. And I found that gap with a backhand. So I think I remember Ian in the third round, all he was saying to me was, when that gap is there, just throw everything you have into it and rock him. And I remember in the third round, I threw this really hard backhand and right down the middle, and he walked onto it as well. And I just remember the look of shock on his face. I was thinking, I have this guy now. I have him figured out tactically, and I have him nervous and doubting himself. And even at the end of the fight, when we were in the clinch, he was talking in Russian to me. It was really weird. He was I don't know what he was saying, but I remember in the clinch I twisted and I got him with an uppercut. And I remember he said something. I was like, oh, I got a response there, which is unusual for the Russians. So I just remember giving him a few more of those. And yeah, the fight ended with him kind of disheartened and me like really fired up and wanting more, even though I really didn't. I was just pretending. But no, it was one of those fights I stepped out of going, I don't remember a thing really what happened. I remember people telling me what happened in it, but I kind of remember the feeling, but I don't remember all the pieces aren't there, you know. And even when I'm looking at the fight afterwards, I'm kind of going, I don't remember any of this. You know, it was one of those fights where I was just in the flow, and I put it down to the visualization and just the pure enjoyment and the buzz I got off it, you know.
And so did it hit you? Did it hit you straight away that you're world champion, or did it take you a couple of moments after to kind of realize that, yeah, I'm after winning, I'm after beating that guy, and not only did I beat him, I'm now world champion as well.
Well, I actually didn't beat the Russian in the final. I beat him in my second match. It was the Italian I fought in the final, but I won on a single point with that. That fight was crazy as well. He was like the Russian, but he fought southpaw. He was a bit tricky in places, and I definitely figured him out towards the end. But I managed to keep my lead throughout the fight, and I think at the end I won on a single point, and I was so tired. I remember keeling over, and I didn't know I'd won because we couldn't see the scoreboards, but everyone else could. I didn't know I had won until Ian, my coach, ran onto the mat and gave me a big hug. But I remember I was so tired I couldn't even stand up, and I remember him just like kind of picking my head up and going, "Pick your fucking head up now! Come on, you're a world champion. Stand up!" And I'm like, "Oh, yes, coach." Just like, "Oh yeah, I won." So I wasn't like immediately jumping for joy. I was just more like, "It's over. I'm trying to catch my breath. I'm feeling a bit dizzy." It was the 30, 40 seconds afterwards. I was like, "Yes, I'd done it. I'm so happy." And you know, and to come back after 10 years and win it again, you know, and maybe prove the naysayers wrong. It was very, very satisfying.
Yeah, and quite I suppose a roller coaster of 10 years as well, like a time in another sport and coming back, and you know, so there was a lot that happened in that 10 years as well.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm looking forward to the next 10 years.
So with that, is the plan to stay in kickboxing, or the fact that you've taken up jiu-jitsu, or
Yeah, like I've things are different for me now. I've got a little baba at home. You know, I might have another one maybe. Um, you know, I'm enjoying being a dad, but I'm definitely enjoying my training. I'm not always gonna fight. I know that. Like I'm always gonna be looking to fight no matter what because I enjoy it too much. I don't know to what extent that is really. Um, you know, but like all I'll say is I definitely want to keep fighting kickboxing. I don't know how seriously I'm going to be able to take it now, being a family man, but like I said, you know, I just enjoy fighting too much.
yeah, do you feel like you're a bit one of the older ones in kickboxing now? Um,
Definitely, yeah. I'm training now with the elite team in our club, and I'm a good 10 years older than some of them. Maybe 15 years older than some of them. It's weird. Like I remember one day myself and Lily. There's only a 3-year age gap between myself and Lily, and you know, the next person below that then was, I think, 14, 15. And myself and Lily were looking at each other one day and going, this is weird. You know?
yeah, I've definitely been in that situation. In my own club, in my club in Shannon, the there's always a couple of people you can train with that are at somewhat at the same level, but those faces have changed quite a lot since when I started to maybe who I'm training mostly with now. And even on the national team, like it comes to like this time for this year for the European Championships, they were cancelled, but I was the oldest senior male, so like that at 25.
Weird,
So
isn't it?
when you're
It's weird.
25
It's
and you're
almost,
looking around being the older guy, it's weird. Like, yeah, definitely.
yeah, it's harder to feel more part of the team when you're the oldest one. Like, whereas if you're younger or somewhere in the middle, you know, but it's weird once you step out of that and you're the oldest person. I find it's just a bit, it's just different mentality, you know. Um, yeah, yeah, it's definitely a weird feeling. All right.
Yeah, I remember it because even on the back of the 2017 Worlds that run in Ireland, and a lot of the guys who I would have came through, like that Adam Shelley, and even I suppose Ryan and a couple of the other guys, they all kind of stepped away and went doing other things, and I was still there. And you're kind of going, well, the group of people I was nearly doing all this, I was doing this with are gone. So then it's like, well, I'm one of the oldest people, and all the people who are around the same age as me are now gone, and it kind of changes the dynamic. But I suppose it's just something else you have to kind of learn to get on with it.
Yeah, that must have
Overcome.
been a that must have been a lonely feeling when, you know, the Shelleys and Cullum Carroll left all at once. It must have been like really weird for not just you but the whole team. Like, You know, it must have been weird because I remember that feeling on the senior team when I was the youngest at one point, and a few of them just didn't show up for the nationals next year, and they're doing their own thing, and they're being parents, so they're following careers. It's weird. Like it's weird. It's sad. It's a sad. You know, it's a shame because I think if there was more for them in their sport, like if it was Olympic recognized or there was funding, I think people would stay longer. You know, but nothing's for them really. You know, that's a big reason why people transition from the sport. They use it as a stepping stone, which is such a shame. People use it as a stepping stone, like I did, to go into taekwondo or to go into MMA. You know, when they don't stick around, and very few of the champions remain to stay and be continuous champions over many many years. You know.
Yeah, and I think that's the challenge that goes with that is the fact that you have to fund yourself all the time. That if you had the opportunity to maybe at least have your costs covered to go to these tournaments, it would entice people to stay. But when you're always at a loss, like time and time again, it can be harder to stay when you have, I suppose, things like you go and you can make the Olympic team and you're maybe pulling some bit of a wage, or you go to MMA and professional and you can fight and or potentially earn money if you're good enough, I suppose. But in our sports, unfortunately, you're always at a loss to go to these tournaments.
Hmm. Yeah, it's also the recognition that goes along with that. Like that was the main thing. Like I didn't go into Olympic Taekwondo for money. Like I went in for recognition. But there's no, like, we're better now with social media, like the way people do it, and people know a lot more of the sporting achievements of people like us in our sports. You know, because you know it gets shared around so much. But you know, 2009 there was none of that. You know, so you know if you won something like that, you might get in the local paper. But um, it's a bit different now. There's definitely more out there, a little bit more out there than there was 10 years ago, but it's still not much. And it's recognition and it's money, and you know until kickboxing or something similar goes into the Olympics where we can transition into well and fight well, and you know we might not get that funding. You know.
Did you find, like you said, did you find maybe after you won in 2009, you were expecting some sort of I suppose some recognition to some degree, and that maybe the things like might be a little bit different, to you might be treated a little bit different, or like a bit bigger deal will be made. But come 2019, was there a different sense of achievement on that? Did it feel maybe more like a personal achievement, or like you'd done it for complete, a bit more of maybe a different sense of achievement winning when you were older and you had the experiences that maybe you did when you won in 2009?
So yeah, like I suppose like in 2009 when I won and I didn't get recognition, my reaction was very childish. You know, like I explained, like I was like, all right, I'm going to show you guys, and you know, and you know, I wanted that recognition. It's like I don't know, you can compare it to like some teenager who doesn't know what they're doing on social media, just looking for a bit of attention. But then I think when I won it, the age I was, last year in October, sorry, it was different. I did it for me. I didn't care too much about what people thought. I guess it was pride for my club and for my country, and it was to prove that I could do it again. It just felt it meant more to me, like more below the surface. I think 2009 I wanted that appreciation on the surface, but 2019 when I won, it just the appreciation was a lot lower, like a lot like deeper, like below the surface. It was I knew I wasn't going to get a whole lot of recognition, but I didn't care. Like I didn't care. My mentality had changed by then. I'd been through so much with GB Taekwondo, and it just felt more right. And I won. I remember in 2009 I won, and Ian turned around and went, "You're a man now." I remember kind of going, "I don't believe you. I don't believe it. I still feel like too much like a kid." And then 2019, I was like, no, this was the year where I feel more like a man. I felt like this was a man's victory, an adult victory, a more humbled and appreciative victory. And it was justified. And I didn't go out my way to look for recognition. I was happy with what I got. I knew I did myself proud and Ian proud and the club proud, and that was enough. And yeah, it sounds a bit corny, but it's like inner peace, you know. It's more like, Zen.
Yeah. No, I definitely had something similar. I won the European Championships in 2015, and it was kind of, I don't really know what I would have expected, but like it was kind of, you realize that you're back in your club the following week, and it's like it's kind of like life goes on to some degree. Like everything is back the way it was the week before to some degree, and you kind of go, well, it's maybe feels a little bit hollow, I suppose, or maybe not what you would have expected. But by the time I won the Worlds and in 2017, and with that, I kind of had much more of a, like you said, it was more like a self validation kind of thing, just more like a or self satisfaction that maybe 15 years at the time it would have been of work and pushing towards it, a dream nearly that I had achieved that. It felt like it was much more like a self thing, that it wasn't about, I didn't care if anything, I didn't expect anything to change. I knew that I was going to be back in the club that next week, but it still felt like I had achieved what I'd set out to achieve.
Yeah, it's like it's not. It feels like you're. I definitely know where you're coming from, and for me, it's like controlling the ego. It's controlling the ego, seeing the brighter, wider picture, and like I think if you go down that road of trying to validate yourself by what other people think of you, it's very easy to go down that road of like flipping that as well. Like I where I think of that is I see, like you can think this way, like where okay, I see joy in my success by what other people think of me, which I think isn't a great place to have joy in the first place. And then the opposite side to that, like if you're one of those people that think that way, it's very easy to take joy in other people who fail. And I think that's also really horrible. Like, it's very easy to like let yourself get twisted into that mentality. Whereas if you're like, okay, I'm happy because I'm doing what I love. I'm improving all the time, and I know I'm improving all the time. And no matter what the outcome, I'm still enjoying the performance. I think that's when you're like I think that's a real credible part of a good martial artist. Whereas if you're someone who has to feed off what other people think and say, and I think it's a slippery slope. And I think, one day you're on top of the world. It's like a drug, you're on top of the world. You won. You're what people talk about and think about maybe, but then you lose. And then what do you think about yourself then? If everyone thought this about you when you won, what do people think about you then consequently when you've lost and you underperformed? It's a very shaky place to place your happiness and your your very self-worth, and it's something that kids can fall into very, very easily, very, very easily. And like, one person pointed out to me, it's like the kid who paints the really good picture, like, okay, they paint the really good picture at home, and the parent goes, wow, that's so good. I'm so proud of you for painting that picture. I love you for painting that picture. And next thing, I'll put it on the fridge, and the kid goes, wow, I'm good to this person because of what I did, not because of who I am. So they value themselves from their parents on what they do, how good I am, what I win, how much I earn, blah blah blah, stuff like this. Whereas if like the parent puts it aside and goes, yeah, this is amazing. I love you for you, and I appreciate you for you. And if you have that mentality, then it won't ever be just about winning. It'll be about becoming better and sharing the happiness of being in a sport like martial arts.
Yeah, I want to like that. I try to nearly think myself in something I kind of, I suppose, realised through winning and losing is nobody gives a shit when you win and nobody gives a shit when you lose. It's kind of, like I suppose, like that. Your parents, like your family, are still your family. Your mates are still your mates, and they're not going to be. Nobody's going to lose any sleep over the fact you lost, but they also won't lose any sleep when you win. And
Yeah.
so when you do it for yourself, and like you said, for the enjoyment that you're doing it, that it changes the mindset. Then, like you don't have it, you don't.
Yeah, it does. Like, and like if you lose, you're probably thinking, "Oh God, what do they think of me now when I've lost?" And uh, in all honesty, people are more selfish than you think. They're not thinking about you all the time. They're not thinking about your last fight, and they
Yeah,
might comment once on it, but it's not going to consume their whole day, their thoughts all day. And they're going to move on and be thinking about themselves. So it's like just it's that detachment from things that don't matter and focusing on things you can control.
yeah, 100%. So before we finish up, if you had to pick a favorite fighter, it doesn't necessarily have to be a kickboxer. It could be across any sport. But if you had to pick a favorite fighter, who would you pick? somebody who you would turn on to watch if you had to want
Ooh,
to pick somebody to watch? Who would you pick?
I have a lot of favorite fighters. Uh, don't know off the top of my head. Um, there's a lot of people that come to mind. There's one fighter I think I love most that uh, my brother Dom. I think my brother Dom, because he has a really good way of seeing fights, and the way he performs and the way he is the way he is always. He's always like what I'm trying to say is about my brother Dom. When he fights, when he doesn't fight, he's the same. He's the same person. He's someone that doesn't seem to let any of the event or atmosphere ever get to him. He seems very impenetrable, and he's the funniest person I know. And like, if I was to have anyone that I'd want to go to competition with and share a day out and compete with, it'd be my brother Dom. He's the first person I think of, and he's not the best fighter in the world and the best boxer in the world. He knows that. In terms of skill, I think there's people out there like Adam Shelley who are just unbelievable. I think Desi Leonard in his prime was amazing. I think Katja Solivi from ITF Taekwondo I think is amazing. There's loads of them. It's very hard to pinpoint one. It's a hard question, But the first person that sprang to my mind was Dom, and that's for personal reasons, not for anything on skill or tactics. Mainly, it's just the person I know and how he is on the mats and off the mats. And to me, a good fighter isn't just someone winning medals all the time. It's their lifestyle. It's their attitude. It's what they bring. It's what they inspire in other people. So the first person I think about is Brother Dom.
Nice. Very, like you said, a very personal one. We've had quite a mix, but it's probably one of the the most personal one we've had so far. But so,
Cool.
yeah, I think like that. I think we'll wrap it up there. Thanks a million for
Cool.
coming on. I've
Thanks,
really
Jamie.
enjoyed the chat. Really enjoyed hearing your story and your journey. Like you've done quite a lot to this point, and maybe it'll continue.
Thank you. And all the best to you as well. Hope you're good, and hope you keep fighting, and your club and everyone around you is safe and sound. And hope to see you in person hope to see you in person sometime.
Yeah, for sure. So take care. All the best.
Take care. Thanks, Jamie. Bye.